So, thank you so much, Ursula, for having us out and trusting us with this time. I mean, this is really important. This is a really important time. Every time is an important time. Right now is when we can be reimagining both landscape and lifestyle because, well, they intersect quite often. So as we mentioned, we're with Studio Petrichor and Pollyanna, our nonprofit, and let's get this started. This is a big picture presentation, and we wanted to remind you that next Tuesday evening, we're going to get very specific about carbon culture. So here we go. First off, we just want you to know that we're not here to bang our fists and use language like we need or we must or predict inevitable scary possibilities. We've had enough of that. I've had enough of that. We know there are needs and musts. We know this because it comes from within, not from others, not from climate scientists nor governments. We can see, hear, and feel the symptoms of a world unbalanced and responding. These messages overburden us and diminish our ability to function much of the time. Our role is to share with you what has been working and not working for us so that you might begin to try, fail, try again until you find a purpose that pulls you forward. We are here to pull the curtains of distraction away and illuminate the simple, crucial, and undeniable reality of living systems, so simple that the reminder is in our every breath. Take a breath. Hold it. Right now, your body is receiving oxygen that it will store and use. Now, what you're releasing is carbon dioxide. Imagine that carbon dioxide going right outside the tree outside your door. And that tree is going to receive that CO2 and sunlight and make sugars and oxygen, which supports us and many other organisms. Natural systems really aren't all that complex when you break it down. For about 3 billion years, Earth's systems have been functioning on a capture, store, use, waste, repeat cycle. We can think of this as receiving, embodying, nourishing, and passing it on, a feedback loop that can renew a multitude of systems. It's this process that makes our living construct work. So we want to make sure that we're all receiving this, and we're going to look at photosynthesis to start. The process of plants receiving that CO2 and sunlight, making sugars and oxygen, driving the food webs, all of which can be cycled and eventually move towards the unsung heroes of the energy cycle, the decomposers like fungi in the soil food web. So our landscapes and lifestyles are unquestionably and inescapably intertwined. Everything we do has an impact, a currency, an exchange. But at what cost? Humanity has been taking without reciprocation for too long. Perhaps we could be more conscious of everything, to why we want, to what we buy, to where we build, and to how we consume. We are a process, not a product, and everything is a process. Until we slow it down and lock it up into a product that cannot be received by the earth. Everything in the universe is made up of energy. Everything has a vibration. Matter is energy that's been slowed down. Our world is filled with energy that has been slowed down and trapped into forms that can disrupt and poison the natural cycles from which we exist. For example, let's look at plastic, or just take, for instance, your cell phone. You can certainly capture with it, take a photo, you can store, you can use it, and you can pass things on with it. But when this is dead and gone, can it be passed on to support a cascade? Can it be returned to the earth to support life cycles? Let's take metal. It has a high embodied energy that requires more energy and more extracted resources to change it. Most of it is not so returnable. And our good old friend concrete. It's also embodied energy created from materials extracted from the land and transformed into something that will eventually crumble. How can it be used again? And how many times? Either way, the extractive cost is high. Fundamental mechanisms and processes evolved a very long time ago that are extremely sensitive to disruption. By polluting our atmosphere, soils, and oceans, we continually disrupt these mechanisms, processes, and pathways. It's time for humanity to reintegrate, to balance out the scale of giving and receiving, and to support a truly regenerative future. Alignment is the key to being the change we wish to see in the world. At our landscape design studio, we're always asking ourselves this question: can it be received by the earth? In an effort to emphasize a closed loop model of design. As mentioned previously, we encounter everyday materials that cannot be returned to the earth. So, how do we, the whole of humanity, change our minds about waste before it ends up in a landfill, which much of what we create often does? As humans, we want, we buy, and we consume. What if we started focusing on what can be received by the earth first? This requires making the unfamiliar familiar. So this client in Hollywood, these clients, they really wanted a native garden. This is a project that was recently on the Theodore Payne garden tour. They really wanted a native garden. And I visited the house. I was super excited to walk onto this property and see this big and beautiful pink and purple home and their bubbly personality. And I walked around the property and I noticed there was a lot of excess materials. There was going to be a lot of demolition. And I started to notice there were a lot of opportunities for us to do things a little bit differently. So I started to talk about regenerative practices. I'm going to share this with you a little bit more about that. And so, for example, when it comes to demolition, during demolition, any sane practical contractor would come in, rip this material up, and haul it off, but not our team. Through creative saw cutting, the reorganization and recomposition of everything you see here, yes, even the dead plant material, we can transform any space from lifeless and impacted to a place that invites, embraces, and supports an abundance of life. This shift in behavior has a profound ripple effect that emanates from our clients outward, and their lives are filled with immense pride and joy from trying something so bold, such as harvesting rainwater, repurposing materials, hugelkultur, which we'll be getting into next week, and our emphasis on really honoring and nurturing the soil profile to increase water holding capacity. What our clients are allowing us to do, and they're doing this with us, is embodying that change we're looking to see in the world.
So this one speaks to the human desire for approval and also bravery for doing things differently. This is a dear friend and now client and even dearer friend. She had a huge problem of the adjacent property flooding onto her home and garden and basement and beyond, washing away her topsoil and drenching everything she owned. She paid a lot to have a garden design done that didn't make any difference. So enter Studio Petrichor, and this is her garden now. By changing the ground plane, creating bioswales and hugelkultur, we have changed this garden to where it harvests that water, infiltrates it, and safely gets rid of any overage. But she wanted to do more. She said, what about the water that's coming from this property? What can we do with that? So there you'll see a bioswale and a berm, a hugelkultur. And as that breaks down and adds carbon to the soil, we have a living, thriving ecosystem. But the water from the backyard, what could she do with that? Well, she could put it into cisterns, but we'd need a way to bring that water out. This was during big fires in California, and she wanted to be able to make that water available to the fire department if necessary. So that creative saw cutting, we used that concrete to build retaining walls, surround 2 different cisterns. And as those cisterns went in, our dear friend had a panic attack. What will the neighbors think of this? And we were good. We asked her how often she complained about her neighbors' yards. And she reluctantly continued until this garden emerged, a place that she told us we could do anything to because she disliked it so much. And now she has moved her office into her breakfast nook so that she can look out into this biodiverse area, seeing butterflies, birds. And for the first time in the 23 years she's lived there, a wild rabbit hopping into her garden. Our clients invest in gardens that restore natural cycles and living systems that proliferate life, rather than ones that interrupt and diminish life. The most exciting thing about this is the phone call. Shawn, when can I turn the water off altogether?
Yep. I said, whatever you want. When are you ready to put your garden to the test? And it's time, and we can do this. We'll talk a little bit about that later.
So making the unfamiliar familiar takes tenacity, bravery, and trust. And when we embrace nature as who, how, and what we are, we embody the change that would support humanity right now. Imagine with us a world where we looked at discards or the materials around us and found a better, more creative use for them to slow the desire for new, which requires more extraction, more disruption, and the creation of more and more discards. These disruptions have been and continue to impact all life. So now we can see our mission clearly, right? We hope that you see it as well. What is that mission? Life, the continuation of life. So how can we embody our mission and not cheat a system that has been in place for eons? Consider, life begins with a single drop of rain, and yet our relationship to that drop is really messed up. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and indulge me in a sensory experience. Imagine your favorite place to go hiking, or one that you would like to go hiking if you haven't been recently. Think about, as you approach, how your mind changes, how that meditative approach to wilderness lights you up. Smell those scents. Listen to those sounds. Is there bird song? Are there insects? Are there little rustlings in the underbrush? Crush some plant leaves in your hands and let those scents waft around you. Sit down and feel the soil and what it's made of. Breathe deeply. This is wonderful. This is what we all want. Now, we're going to have to go back. We always have to go back, don't we? Another sniff, another feel. Okay, why is it that we take time out of our lives to go on hikes, to go camping, to be immersed in nature, communing, healing, connecting, restoring? And then we return home to landscapes that need to be kept on life support.
So imagine with us, it's raining and you're a drop of rain. Splash, you hit the pavement. Cars are racing by, polluting the water with emissions, brake dust, and so much more. You are now water and poison. You are making your way with your fellow raindrops down a gutter when suddenly you fall from the road into a hole, draining into a garden, a rain garden, where the soil has been nurtured and loved. It has been optimized. And as you begin to move through the soil, the life, the microbes, the fungi, the plant roots are all thanking you for being there. They're cleansing you of the poison you've collected. You've been purified. As a drop of rain, plant roots gulp you up, receive you, embody you, and they are nourished by you so that they can capture and store carbon dioxide. That's important, right? They create oxygen and sugars to pass on that in turn support biodiversity, which is community above and below ground, to which we all belong. until finally on a warm, sunny day, they pass you on back to the atmosphere.
Our team's big mission is to inspire a global paradigm shift by influencing humanity's reintegration with nature. More specifically, to reconnect humanity to our impact, starting with that drop of rain, acknowledging where it came from, what it's been through, and how we can honor it. And that takes us to the LA County Arboretum and the Crescent Farm, where our methods are used to demonstrate water optimization and creating diverse environments. For 80 years, this was a lawn, and you can see how many people are on that lawn, as in 0, but it still required mowing and blowing and edging and fertilizing and watering. So that acre of land was skinned of that turf. That turf was dried out in the hot summer sun, turned upside down, and used to create these mounds. We changed the ground plane, harvesting water in that way. Those flat lawns, those are artifacts of a lawnmower. And as we began to get in touch with the land, we changed that. We don't need the lawnmower. We need to harvest water. There's mulch everywhere, wildflowers, and within 3 months, this garden was flourishing, attracting pollinators of all kinds, and teaching everyone who came to visit and help with it, build it. Where there is carbon in the soil, there is water. And where there's water in the soil, there's life. Without soil life, we're lost. So as you're looking at this garden, you're seeing an arid climate orchard that is very seldom watered. You're seeing native plants as well as imported plants, but all are pollinator plants, supporting pollinators. You're seeing lawn substitutes from native grasses that delight us with the bees that surround them. You're seeing a bioswale actively bringing in water where it runs off of other gardens when it rains, and an infiltration basin where the water goes into the earth and recharges the aquifer. And there is where the ground plane is shifted with some giant logs that came down in a windstorm. And that sod you saw earlier, that hedgerow just beginning there has never been watered. It's now 11 years old and is sponsored by the Xerces Foundation, our native insect foundation, because it harbors so many birds and native insects.
We're gonna see a lot more on this next week, on next Tuesdays. You're gonna want to see its progress.
Oh, yes. But in front of it, there is an all-season meadow. It's not always in bloom like this, but when it is one of the most refreshing things in the Arboretum. My favorite day is once a woman standing there on her cell phone saying, "I don't know where I am. I don't know what this is. I just know you need to be here. I know you don't feel good, but come. No, it's not the Huntington. No, it's not. Oh, I know what to do." And she flipped her phone so that the camera was not on her. It was on the wildflowers. And then we heard her say, "I will drop a pin. I will see you here. You're going to feel a lot better." So nurturing living soil, supporting carbon sequestration, active and passive water harvesting, increasing biodiversity and habitat, educating and empowering communities, changing people's perception of beauty. All of that is happening here, and you can visit this garden 364 days a year at the LA County Arboretum. Historically, form follows function is defined as the shape of a building, object, or space, primarily relating to its intended function or purpose. So, What is the function we are relating our designs to? Is it to meet the needs and desires of human activity? Is it purely an aesthetic ideal? Function is a word that represents energy, flow, and movement. Our focus is on the function of the landscape systems that guide how we design with nature. This is co-creation. In other words, humanity reaps the benefits when we put nature first.
So the water shortage has always been here. We've known about it for decades, and yet most of us chose to continue with business as usual. We get it. Changing is rough. And now that the media and governments are strongly recommended, as well as enforcing restrictions well after dropping to historical low water levels, everybody's scrambling. Many of us knew and heard and chose to ignore the signs, and the most basic element just after oxygen that our bodies require for survival has been threatened for a very long time. Okay, is the answer to scramble and grab for resources in a state of emergency, to rip out lawns and just stop watering? When has drama and overreaction ever really served us well? There's no quick solution to fixing this. However, one thing we can all do is slow down, breathe, listen. I'm sure there's a couple people here that meditate. I know I do. Some may think it's a bit woo, but for seriously, relationships with the land invite us to listen, to observe, and of course, question. Emergency, bad, crisis are just a few of the words that we're all reacting to, and many of us have shut down. It's time to redefine the game. And you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Thank you, Bucky. Folks are always asking us, so how do we take this change to the citywide level? That's a great question, and we're working on that as we speak. However, for us, designing with these supportive interconnected systems are easy for us because we've been out there doing, trying, failing, trying again, succeeding, and learning for a while now. Again, our biggest hurdle, an underlying core issue I will get to in just a minute. But first, before we get there, I want to take you on a journey through the city of Burbank, or more specifically, a green waste journey. So, in the city of Burbank, made up of residences, business, and governments, they collectively produce 18,000 tons of landscape clippings per year.
Verified.
Verified, yes. In the city of Burbank, and by green waste, what we're referring to are lawn trimmings and tree trimmings and all of the stuff that ends up in the green bin, now compost. Yes, even plastic ends up there too. And all of this is packed into the green bins, which are collected by Packer trucks. And those Packer trucks end up going to the recycling center in Burbank, where all of this is packed into semi-trucks and hauled over the Grapevine to Lamont. So over that, each year, 900 loads at 21 tons per truck are delivered. 180,000 miles are driven per year. 2,880 hours spent, and over 27,000 gallons of fuel are used, creating 562,000 pounds of CO2 per year. And that's 95 miles driven each way to take the green waste from Burbank over to a sorting area. Now let's add 247,000 pounds of CO2 per year for the Packer trucks that drive around the city. And just for the heck of it, let's add in the mow and blow maintenance. That's 881,000 pounds of CO2 per year. So the organic discards are moved 17 times before they return to the soil.
Ay, ay, ay.
And the amount of person power that goes into sorting and moving plastic slows this down even further. The city loses the potential of 100,000 pounds of nutrients and soil amendments, increasing water holding capacity per year. Couldn't all of our landscapes benefit from this so-called waste?
The City of Pasadena's Water and Power Division engaged us to demonstrate waste transformation, to reimagine water conservation. What they weren't expecting was a game changer. Shawn mentioned optimization earlier. This truly represents the "and" in our work. And it embodies transforming our relationship to waste. Yeah, that's also pretty messed up. For this collaboration, we are embracing simple techniques to transform green waste and other organic discards that would normally be sent to a landfill to teach communities ways to thoughtfully create beautiful, resilient, biodiverse gardens. Our response was, of course, yes, and may we demonstrate a whole systems approach to our design. Listen, this practice of building and optimizing landscapes through waste transformation is accessible, effective, and it's really fun to do with your community. Welcome to what we call the carbon culture. And next week, we'll do a lot more on that. When we combine those things with honoring that drop of rain and a focus on local ecology, we are co-creating abundance for all beings. What if this 1 acre median were reimagined as a functioning, living system rather than as an island cut off? We could pull that poisonous raindrop into this space, move it through rain gardens and soil that have been enriched by materials that would either end up in a landfill or back into the atmosphere. When this island becomes a sponge that can support the local biodiversity of plants, wildlife, microbes, and more, it becomes a functioning, resilient part of the whole again. All while building this with the community, because people are the catalyst, and we all have a stake in this work, and we can pass it on. Nature has shown us that collaboration is the most effective, efficient way to thrive. Being in community is how life works. We cannot afford to deny or avoid this any longer. Reimagining our relationship to the land and co-creating with the communities above and below ground benefits us all. This can be a naturally occurring practice if we choose to support it. We are building a new model of landscape design and lifestyle that rejects the status quo and challenges the old paradigm. And our clients and collaborators invest in supporting these cycles for them, their communities, and the Earth systems we are all part of. They also happen to receive beautiful gardens that remind them of their impact on a daily basis. It's so simple, from leaving your leaves to a log in the landscape, to reimagining sponge-like resilient cities functioning as living organisms. Some of you may be thinking, I'm not planning a new garden. So how do we optimize what we do have? Or how do we reimagine both our relationship to the land and our personal impacts on the land? Stepping into possibility could start with simply washing dishes in a bowl and using that water to water your plants.
Now, the question in most of your minds is, what about the soap? Won't that be bad for the soil? Our response to you is, what kind of soap are you using that you would normally send down the drain, only to hopefully be thoroughly cleaned by your local reclamation plant? The answer we have for you is
choose a better
soap. Yeah.
What is awesome about that very question is that it got you thinking about your impact almost immediately. Bam, that's powerful. Imagine if before we went to the grocery store, there were a series of mental preparations we could take before we made our grocery list. We're headed down the rabbit hole to uncover how much we are surrounded with extractive, toxic, and disruptive matter, what we think we need. It's time to reimagine what we could be doing to start somehow. Another possibility would be to start with simply refusing unnecessary plastic in our lives. Plastic is a byproduct of the fossil fuel industry. Getting to the root of and separating from this industry is one of the most difficult hurdles. Is it possible to stop specific behaviors and start better ones somehow? The sooner the better, and the easier it will get. We believe we can do this when we can get past an even bigger hurdle.
So this is where we witness the transformation. Plants, wildlife, and watersheds do not adhere to geopolitical or property line boundaries. We are stuck in place in the age of separation in a dualistic paradigm. It has been either us or nature, controlling or disrupting or standing by and observing, us or them. We've been taking from and controlling a resource that is abundant and generous for too long. How do we interrupt that destructive cycle? It's so simple. Mindfulness and care. What would it take for us to understand how important this is, and do we care enough to change our behaviors? He's reason enough for me. What if we blurred that line of separation, made it an and merged those sides into I am reciprocating, co-creating, and in relationship with these naturally occurring systems? Human behavior is causing excessive emissions, the extraction and the exhaustion of our finite resources, and our behaviors are driven by our beliefs and our values. So here we are at our biggest hurdle, the core of the problem. It's not climate change. Let's get something very clear. Climate change is not doing this to us. We can no more reverse climate change than we can turn back time. An attempt to beat climate change is yet another forceful, controlling, misguided us versus it paradigm that does not meet the reality of the laws of the natural world. The heart of the problem is right here, the human mindset, an individual stew of beliefs and values that we've collected and held on to our whole lives. These are made up of messages we've received from our parents, our communities, the cultures that shaped us, and all of those who came before us. Now, at any moment, we can choose to upgrade those inherited, antiquated, destructive beliefs and values and switch them out for better ones. It's not easy, but it's worth starting. Trying for 0 to 100% is part of that same dualistic paradigm or mindset. And anywhere in between is great, but it takes the same amount of effort to dream up 5% as it does 95%. So this is no easy task, or could it be? This comes down to choice, to identifying what really matters to you. For me, at the core of it all, it's life, my son's life, the life of future generations. I choose to start from there. And even if it's not our fault, it is our responsibility. Now back to mindfulness and care. As humans, we're always seeking quality of life, but I can't help but ask, quality of life for whom? Just us? Who benefits when we strip the earth, plant a water-thirsty lawn, pour some concrete, lay down some gravel mulch just because it looks clean? We don't realize the negative impact we're having on the underground community of roots and the soil food web that makes up for 95% of all terrestrial life on this planet. There is quality of life when we care for life.
So Beyond Design is Pollyanna, our nonprofit. This is how we engage communities, pass on this knowledge and these practices, and help them to inspire others. Because it works, because we, the people, are the catalyst. Together, we can support this mission for life. To manifest change, we have to participate, work together, and definitely get dirty. We support one another so we can support this precious world. Even the simple act of washing dishes in a bowl, or refusing to submit to a plastic-covered everything, to turning our paper discards into soil to jumpstart soil biology. The simple act of reusing cardboard or takeout containers, a form of potential energy, and transforming it into active energy to support living systems. That's truly awesome. What you're seeing here is mycorrhizal fungi colonizing the cardboard you saw in the previous image. 3 weeks later, it's magic. These habits and practices will support regenerative cycles and proliferate life, well-being, abundance for you and all other beings. Imagine starting here. It seems too simple. It is that simple. Even this dead tree still has life in it. That cardboard, Shawn's shirt, still has something to offer. Can we reimagine landscapes that actively capture, store, use, and pass on these embodied energies rather than lock them up in a form that disrupts and diminishes life and ends up in a landfill?
All right. In closing, I'd like to ask you to take another deep breath in. Receive that oxygen, that gift, hold it, embody it, and let it nourish you. And when you're ready, let go. And right there, that was it. That moment you let go and returned it to the earth. As you breathe without even trying, that's when you pass it on. You already embody the catalyst to a multiplicity of possibilities. We manifest change when we pass it on. Be willing to support the systems that so beautifully support us. Let's start by honoring that breath, that single drop of rain, and our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you.